Yaroslav Askarov has gotten his wish. He's been traded to the San Jose Sharks.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this special breaking news edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio. And of course, I am joined by my partner in crime.
I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Nashville Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
We are jumping on this Friday afternoon.
Thank you, Barry Trotz.
Barry Trotz. To react to and share the news of the trade that has just gone down. I want to just remind everybody on a Friday afternoon, the trade has gone down that Yaroslav Askarov has gotten his wish. He has been traded to the San Jose Sharks in a deal that includes Nolan Burke and a third-round draft pick in the 2025 draft. That is going to San Jose. In return, the Nashville Predators are getting setter David Edstrom, goalie Magnus Johansson, and a 2025 first-round draft pick. So just first of all here, Emma, we've been talking all week long about Yaroslav Askarov wanting to move on from Nashville. How do you feel like this deal looks just on the surface? What's your initial reaction to what Barry Trotz has done?
Well, aside from it being on a Friday afternoon,
did we mention that?
Imagine you're about to go home for the weekend and your boss schedules a meeting at 4 p.m. on Friday afternoon, because that is what has just happened with Ann and me. Just so everyone feels bad for us. I just really want to hammer that home. No, but I think it's, my initial reaction is I think it's a good trade. Like, I think if you were obviously with Askarov being the Predators' first round pick from 2020, a return should include a first round pick, whether that's in the form of a prospect or a future pick. Obviously, it's the latter. So now the Predators have 3 first round picks in 2025, which is not nothing, as you would say.
That's not nothing.
So I think that is good. I think, obviously, as we talked about earlier this week, the Predators really kind of lack depth in net behind Askarov. So it was good that they got another goalie prospect in return to kind of fill that void. And, I think that overall, obviously they need depth at center as well. And so that's another need they addressed, not in the form of an NHL ready prospect, but that's okay. They're not really in a position where they need that right now. So I think overall it's a pretty good trade.
Yeah. I think initial reaction from Predators fans is going to be that it wasn't enough. But again, I feel like that is based on potential and not body of work when it comes to Yaroslav Askarov. And here's the thing, you have to do something. You want to get something. And I agree with you, to get a first round pick back for a first round pick. I think that is, again, as I would say, that is not nothing. And it just bolsters what Barry Trotz can do at the trade deadline. It bolsters what the Predators can do if they opt to hang on to those things at the draft. So this opens up some potential for the Nashville Predators. What they gave up, Nolan Burke, this is forward. He played 47 games last year in the ECHL. He played with the Atlanta Gladiators. He got just very brief time in the AHL with the Milwaukee Admirals when he was with the Gladiators. 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 points. A young player, played for the Sarnia Sting, 21 years old. He signed with Nashville as a free agent in November 2022. Some people see a lot of potential in Nolan Burke. Some people feel like, this is somebody who's going to probably peak in the AHL, but still very young. definitely has some talent. So I think that, San Jose is getting someone that they can work and develop and see where he ends up as well. I will say, just personally, want to point out that Nashville got 2 Swedes in return. So
I knew
shout
you were
out.
going to like that.
Neither one of them is named Matthias Ekholm, but shout out to the 2 Swedes. Welcome. Magnus Krona, you mentioned, getting a goaltender in return. I think this is a really good move for the Nashville Predators. This is somebody who last season played at the ECHL, AHL, and NHL level. So he's kind of been a little of everywhere. I think he'll probably land with Milwaukee in the AHL last season, 31 games played, had an .894 save percentage, and just a little bit of trivia, somebody that he shared time in net with in the AHL, Devin Cooley. Former Milwaukee Admirals goaltender Devin Cooley, now Calgary Flames.
Yeah. I think also another thing I've seen in the very early stages is people perhaps overreacting to that .894 save percentage and his record. I think it's 17 and 6 last season. Not great, for sure. Not great. But remember who he was playing for.
Right.
That's all I will say. I think that, it's hard to judge a goaltender based on numbers alone. When the team in front of him is clearly not high quality. And so I think that it's one of those things that, I'm not qualified to speak on it because I haven't watched a ton of film of him, but I just think my initial feeling on this is to say, like, I'm going to reserve judgment on those numbers until I actually see what he can do with a better team in front of him.
Absolutely. And we are going to get more insight into these players that Nashville is adding to their roster. We are going to do a special crossover episode with JD Young. He is the host of Locked On San Jose Sharks. He has been eyeballing Yaroslav Askarov all week long. So JD is living his best life right now, but we're going to do a crossover episode and bring that to you next week, a full episode. So be sure to tune in there, and we're going to get more into the nuts and bolts of this deal. Coming up, we're just going to give you our assessment overall of the positives and the questions we have initially in response to this deal. This reaction episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Emma, we're going to dive into the nuts and bolts again with JD Young coming up next week. But when you look at the fact that this trade has been made, what are your feelings? Just kind of initial response.
Well, I think, we've talked about how obviously with Askarov's trade request and the way that he went about it earlier this week, it was a little like, obviously it caused some friction, some drama. And I think that while we did point out that Barry Trotz was not obligated to oblige his request, he didn't have to trade him. I do think that it's in everyone's best interest to get it done before training camp, before anything, just like get all of that extracurricular drama out of the way. So you can just focus on hockey, focus on who you've got going into training camp and then into the season. So I think it does, like, people are talking about, oh, the Predators lost leverage. I don't think that's true. I also don't think that they got fleeced in this deal either. I'm seeing some takes about that, it's an L, the deal's an L for the Predators. And the fact of the matter is, when you're dealing with prospects, especially, you really can't know like whether
Absolutely.
it's a dub or an L at the end of the day, because you're not going to know for probably a few years. Kind of the truth with any trade, to be honest, but especially when you're dealing with prospects and draft picks. So, I think any reaction at this point is probably an overreaction, like any strong reaction. But I think that it is a win for the Predators, just strictly because they got this off their plate. They got it out of the way, out of their hair before they go into training camp, and they don't have to worry about any of this extracurricular drama.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And I like what you're saying too about, evaluating this trade. This is a trade that involves prospects and young players. And it's a trade that's really based on potential. And it's also based on two teams that are in two very different positions and are going to be in two very different positions for the next 2 to 3 seasons. And so you're comparing potential in a case of apples to oranges. And that's not a criticism of San Jose by any stretch of the imagination. They're just in a different place than where Barry Trotz has opted to put the Predators. And so I agree with you. This is one of those deals that we're going to have to revisit in 5 to 6 years. And then let's talk about it and let's really see what it is. I also absolutely second what you're saying about, Barry Trotz could sit Yaroslav Askarov as long as he wanted to. But there's really not a huge benefit. And here is who I think benefits the most. And that is the young players making huge strides in Milwaukee. And for the players like Joachim Kimmel, for Zachary Leroux, for Fedor Svechkov, for the Mark Del Gaizos, for all of the talent. And that's just scratching the surface of the talent of players that they have in Milwaukee and that they're developing. Those are players who do not need to go into Milwaukee's training camp with that kind of a black cloud hanging over them. That was a locker room that was extremely close. That was, we had talked with Carl Taylor. He said there was something very special about that group. Now, it's going to look a little bit different because the AHL has turnover and some may come up to Nashville and some have moved on. But you don't want that kind of situation as a part of your team. And so for me, yes, big picture, Nashville, what do they get in return? And again, we're going to dive into that early next week with JD. But for me, I am relieved for the Milwaukee Admirals players because they have so much going and there are so many players that are really wanting to take that next step next season. And this is off the table for them. And I think that's really important in Milwaukee as well.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I still think the Predators come out as a winner in this, not a winner like as in they win and San Jose loses. I don't think it has to be I think it doesn't have to be a competition. I just think that Nashville wins for all the reasons you just said, but also because now they don't risk, like you said, we didn't have to trade Askarov, but now you don't have to risk losing him to the KHL, in which case you get nothing. And now at least they get, some assets in return from San Jose. So, it was clear that Askarov didn't have a future with Nashville, and that's okay. But, I think that it was handled the best way it could have been by the Predators in this scenario.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what? Godspeed, Yaroslav Askarov. And, to San Jose, you will love him. You will enjoy him. I hope that he finds whatever he feels like he needs and deserves in that situation. And he very well may. This could be a really great fit for him with his development and the development of the San Jose Sharks as well. So Godspeed, young man. Godspeed. Again, tune in on Monday. We're going to have a reaction video crossover with JD Young, again, from Locked On San Jose Sharks. He's going to give us some more insight into the players that Nashville has gotten in this trade. And we're going to talk about what the future may look like for Yaroslav Askarov in net across the country in San Jose. Before we sign off, Emma, where can everyone find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That is going to do it for this, dare I repeat it, Friday afternoon special edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Breaking news again, Yaroslav Askarov off to San Jose. We will be back on Monday with that all new episode. We hope you all have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.